I think we're live. Hey, all. Welcome to the All In, your weekly live show dedicated to helping athletes optimize every aspect of their performance. I'm Coach Chuck, and I'm joined with my co-host, Coach Brian. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for having me again, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Now, before we jump in, a quick reminder, we'll be here every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so mark your calendars. We'll also be publishing a tentative schedule. Yeah, it's in pencil, of course, because we want to stay flexible and bring you content that really matters to you. So we've kind of changed a little bit because our show is now built around the 5 pillars of the all-in philosophy. Core, that's the athlete health, covering everything from stress to sleep. Thrive, which we're going to do tonight, is our nutrition. And and those things, fueling strategies to keep you fueled for your event. We're going to talk about perform. That's for smart targeted training techniques. Recovery, of course, that's to explore how to rest, adaptation, prevent injury, and support longevity. And the last one is edge. And then we'll tackle some of the mental side of performance like mindset, motivation, and resilience. So tonight, Brian wanted to talk about Thrive. And we're going to dive in and look at the fueling for training, racing, kind of just the basics. We may have to do this in a 2-part series. We'll see. Brian and I just had an hour conversation before we even started. So we're going to break down these nutrition strategies, maybe some hydration stuff. So Brian, I know this is a topic you're passionate about as a coach and especially as an athlete. So are you ready to dig in?
Yeah, let's do this. I've got lots of things to talk about, lots of questions to ask. And kind of rolling right into it, you've brought up an interesting approach to how to handle the nutrition side of things. For me, and I think probably a lot of you out there, it's always been, okay, well, calories in, calories out. How many calories did I burn in a day? Did I get adequate protein? Did I get adequate carbohydrates? Did I get those adequate macros within the day? One of the things you've been discussing recently is how we adapt that for the workout for the day. We were talking in the hour we were talking prior to this. We were talking about, fueling for the gym. First thing in the morning, you're going to hit the gym, fuel for the gym. And then you've got some training. You've got some intervals. You've got some efforts to do, or you've got a long ride to do. You've got this huge variety of training protocols that you have to get in during a week, but each day is a little bit different in what you're doing. So logically enough, and I quite honestly never thought about it prior to our conversations about this, but logically enough, you should feel for those things specifically as opposed to just another day on the bike. So yeah, if you go into that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So the first thing I'd like to do is just throw out there that first thing we have to remember is kind of, what's the goal? So if somebody has excessive body fat and so forth, and the goal is to lose that, you have a slightly different strategy. What we're talking about is using food as fuel for, the work required. So I kind of want to just throw that out there real quick. And this is very, very specific to, we know what we're trying to do. We've got goals that, include power numbers and competitions and so forth. So that's kind of the start point. So the big thing is when we talk about periodization, everybody knows kind of we do the base, the build, the peak, the race, the transition, and so forth. And so when we look at each one of those phases has a slightly different nutritional requirement. So tonight we'll just kind of talk about base because that's where most of us are. We talk about in season and out, off season. Well, honestly, we're in preseason. If we want to use kind of a terminology from team sports. So we're in preseason and we're trying to build those things. So the start point is, what are we doing? What do we need right now? So do you want to share how much protein you're on a daily basis?
I am taking approximately 255 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
I look at a chicken and I get PTSD from seeing a chicken on a ranch. But it's been really good. Able to build some muscle. lean out, do all those things, would highly recommend it. But I got to tell you, it's a lifestyle change, to consume that much protein on a daily basis. And I would go ahead.
It is. So, so right now, when you look at protein and protein is one of those things that it doesn't matter if you're in base, build, no matter what phase you're on, as cyclists, sprinters particularly, but just in general, even endurance cyclists, you should be on somewhere between 2 and 2.4 grams per kilogram of body weight. So, that's why, we're close to a little bit over, but that's where that protein number comes from. And that comes from hard science too. The reason why is when you look at protein has two functions: to build and repair tissue, and then it's also an alternative fuel source. And so that build and repair tissue is what we have to do after, before and after each gym workout, and actually before and after each endurance type of ride, so some type of aerobic ride. So that's kind of on that side of the house. So you brought up that, traditionally you've kind of like, hey, I get up, I eat, whatever, and then I go to the gym. So what I've started doing, about a month ago, is I have a breakfast that is actually fairly carbohydrate. I mean, there's a lot of protein in it too, because I try to take in, 20 to 40 grams of protein every 3 hours. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes about some on the bike. But so in the morning, I do rolled oats inside of a jar with 50 grams of rolled oats, 100 grams or 200 grams of Greek yogurt, some vanilla, some cinnamon, and then almond milk. Shake it up, and half a banana. Shake it up, put it in the fridge, overnight oats. I know you do a similar thing, just
just the much lazier version. Yeah.
So that's kind of thinking about, okay, now I'm going to fuel for the gym. Then immediately following the gym, you have to take in some protein, because now you're repairing that muscle. So you need that protein. Then, because my coach Brian Abers, has me on the watt bike either pretty soon after or later on in the afternoon. And that workout is typically a very intense type of workout. So for me to be able to hit my max numbers in the gym and then turn around and hit my max numbers on the bike, I need to take in some carbohydrates. I need to be fueled for the bike too. So my fueling strategy for that day would be in the morning and then in the afternoon for those two events. And that's irrelevant of the rest of my day.
So one of the questions I have along those lines is, and I think you touched on it when I was doing my diatribe at the beginning, but one of the things that's always challenging is, this is the time of year that we're going to build, and we're actually going to be able to build that muscle in its most efficient manner, right? But if you're carrying a few extra pounds, we need to, of course, reduce that caloric intake in order to drop those few pounds. But in the process, we're running a very real risk of losing that hypertrophy element of the strength training as well. How do you balance with your riders, more on the endurance side? How do you balance the work that they may not necessarily need to drop any weight, but they're certainly burning a lot of calories on the bike. They're certainly doing a lot of work. How do you balance that hypertrophy with that potential caloric deficit?
So you have two types. You have what's called a high flux and a low flux diet. So a low flux diet is if somebody's going to lose weight, it's purely done out of a caloric restriction or deficit. Because you're not going to talk them into doing 10 to 20,000 steps a day. You're not going to talk them into riding the bike 2 hours a day. You're not going to talk them into going to the gym. So you basically just have to cut the calories. And if they lose muscle, as long as they're losing fat at a better rate than they're losing muscle, then that's fine. However, with our athletes, we need to have them on what we call a high flux diet. So that means that the caloric deficit is coming more from activity and exercise than it is from food intake. So you bring up a great point, because one of the things you always hear, and I was on the phone last night with Will, and I hope Will's watching tonight. And he'd ask about, what about this? What's the science say about bodybuilders who are like, oh, I'm not going to do cardio because it's going to cut into my hypertrophy. Well, we call that concurrent training. And what typically occurs is that somebody is not really fueling for either. And so they go to the gym, they're in a caloric deficit to start with, or they may be in a surplus, and they do their gym workout. Now their muscle glycogen stores have gone down. They're not fueling for the cardiovascular workout. So they're not for their aerobic workout. So now all they're on is liver glucose, and their body's in a caloric deficit. So they basically kind of lose they lose muscle mass, because the body goes to muscle to try to get energy. Because a lot of those concurrent sessions are typically HIIT. So the body doesn't have time to go to fat and do fat utilization, that type of stuff. So in our cases, what we have to do is make sure that our athletes, they're fueling for the gym, and then they're fueling for the work, fuel for the work being done. They're fueling for that ride. If they're fueling for both, even if they're in a little bit of a caloric deficit from the ride, they're not going in and eating muscle for the purposes of energy,
because of that carbohydrate intake.
Because of the carbohydrate intake. Got it. And then if Frank was on the line, he would tell you that the science also says you can take ketone esters as an alternative for the carbohydrates, and Quick Step's trying that and a couple others. We'll see how that science comes out.
It's kind of interesting dabbling with that. I've been playing with that a little bit with some of my workouts going in that second workout specifically. And I find that, there's no empirical data on it, from the way I've been doing it. I just feel stronger. I feel better. I feel more energetic. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like I'm just dragging. I'm getting effective workouts with both of them with a short time period between the two. It seems, at least by feel, by proprioception, it's certainly effective that way for me.
Right. Yep. But the big thing is, like I said, fuel for the work to be done. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a concept called train low, compete high. And Dr. James Morton from back when it was Team Sky, this is one of the things that they were doing. And what happens is that you do that initial workout in the morning and you're fueled. Then you have a second workout in the day. Now that second workout could be another aerobic activity, or it could be you've done a gym in the morning and the aerobic in the afternoon. Well, you take in your fuel for the workout in the morning. Then you take in your protein afterwards, because you're building repairing tissue, and you're taking in protein every 2 to 3 hours. And then you're fasted till that second workout. You do that second workout in a fasted state. And what they've seen is there is some fat oxidation that occurs. So you are becoming more fat adaptive. You're using fat as a fuel source. You have mitochondrial biogenesis, which basically means you're building more mitochondria. So there's two very big aspects to that. And that mitochondrial biogenesis actually puts more mitochondria, which means that you're becoming more aerobically fit. So that's kind of an interesting one I've been playing with, and it's just 30 minutes to an hour. So do your normal gym workout, bike workout, and then go fasted. About 4 hours later, just do 30 minutes. You feel like crap. I mean, you're like, why is this zone 2 so damn hard? Well, it's because you're not fueled, but you've got some adaptation going on, and then you have a higher carbohydrate meal in the evening, and then you've topped your glycogen stores off. So,
and ready to go back to work the next morning.
And ready to go back to work the next day. And that's a great point. So one of the things that, I talk about periodization, and we're looking at it from a phase, but I want to emphasize that we're also talking about periodization during the week, in your micro phase. And the reason why I say that is because if you're on a day in which you have a moderate workout, then you ought to be taking in that 2 to 2.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Then you should also be taking in somewhere between 3 and 6 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. That's for the moderate ones. If you're going to do like a long ride on Saturday, or you've got this 2 intense, workouts. So for instance, from years of my perspective, we go in and we've got hypertrophy day in the gym. So we're doing, 4 sets of 10 progressives on squats. And then you're going over the, blah, 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 blah. And then in the afternoon, you've got this really, really high watt bike workout. Then you might be up to closer to 7 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight, because you're fueling that system. Then on the flip side, let's say today's a recovery day, or you're injured, or something like that. Then you keep the protein the same, and then you drop your carbohydrates down to about 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. And so now you've got to plan on what you're doing for recovery days and light days, what you're doing for your moderate days, and then what you're doing for your intense days. And your total caloric, you can kind of play with the fat on the recovery days, but you're basically just bumping up your calories for that those hard days. And fat wise, you should probably have somewhere between 20 and 35% of your total daily caloric requirements in fat, good fats. So yeah, that's good fats and smart carbs.
Good fats and smart carbs.
Yep.
So this is, this sounds like it takes a little work, and it kind of touches on a point of, maybe the mental game part of that, right? I've got a scale. I remember at one point, laughing about that. There's no way I'm ever weighing my food. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Well, guess what? I spent a lot of time weighing food at this point. Spent a lot of time charting nutrition, charting macros and caloric intake, and comparing it with, the data I'm getting from my Whoop and everything else. It takes some discipline, and it goes back to that discipline thing. We can't do any of those steps in the all-in system without having the discipline. You need to actually monitor this stuff.
Think about the times that you've had a client who freaks out because their battery in their power meter died, or they left their heart rate strap at the house. They freak out that they don't have, they don't have zone 1 data from a recovery ride on a heart rate strap. And they're like, but yet they'll eat a 6-pound Chipotle burrito after a 1-hour endurance ride because, so
because they're hungry, they didn't feel properly beforehand, and now they're starving. So that 6-pound Chipotle burrito seems like a really good idea, and then you wonder why that. And oh, look, it's Christmas time. Look at all these Christmas cookies on the plate in the lunchroom. One won't hurt. Well, what's one Christmas cookie, Chuck?
Just 250 calories, but
yeah,
I wouldn't know that.
250, something like that. No idea. Absolutely none whatsoever. Because I don't weigh Christmas cookies, but you have to be as conscientious of that as the most conscientious thing within your training. If I'm a meathead gym bro. I love going into the gym and smashing it in the gym and just crawling out of the gym. And every rep and every set has got to be as good as I can do it, and as with as much weight as I can do it with, to meet the protocols. But you have to do that with everything. I have to do that with nutrition, which is like the other end of that spectrum. Up until 18 months ago, or whenever we started doing this with the nutrition side, I didn't. That was absolutely my weak spot. It's better now, and it's a work in progress, but it's certainly affected very positively all of my training and the racing that goes with it.
Well, wait till we get to core and we talk about sleep.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be a good one. But yeah, I think all the stuff we talk about, it takes a little bit of grit to do. It's not the, and it's funny because I can't, every year after Worlds, I say, well, I'm going to go, the first thing I'm going to do is go grab a pizza. And
Right.
I can't pull the trigger on it. I can't bring myself to do it now. I've become, this has become so ingrained with the diet thing, with the nutrition side of it. Let's not call it a diet. Let's call it nutrition. But
It's called fuel.
yeah, it's called fuel, and that's exactly what it is. We've laughed about, you standing there with a, with a knife and a rotisserie chicken, and me eating over the air fryer the chicken breast right out of the air fryer because I can't be bothered to plate it. So, again, it's about all in, right? How all in do you want to be? If you want to, if you want to slack on something, slacking on nutrition, on fuel is certainly not the place to do it. And I'm of the opinion that you shouldn't be slacking on anything. If you want to be the best athlete that you can be, then you don't slack on anything. You can't leave anything on the table.
Yeah, and after our all in discussion, I kind of had a little bit of a change. All in is hitting all 5 of the pillars that's necessary for you to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve.
Yes, absolutely. Brilliantly put, actually. And the best definition because I sat there trying to define it, and that's kind of it, really. Whether, it's not a case of whether you can achieve them or not. It's, that you have to achieve those,
right,
to make those goals, and not being willing to go the extra mile to achieve those is leaving something on the table.
Right. And there's some strategies of things that we can do that do make things easier. For instance, my wife's had a lot of success simply because she meal plans the week for herself, and she has her meals just laid out, and she eats the same thing every time. So in her case, she doesn't even have to weigh anything anymore just because she knows, what she's taking in. Myself, I prefer a lot more diversity in my food. And so then I have to, what am I having tonight? Well, tonight's some type of fish. So I got to figure this one out.
Got to be creative with it, certainly. Sure.
Yeah. But one thing that you can do is that if you know that you're going to have a higher, calorie meal, twice in this week, is you can simply, plan out and make those meals, put them in the fridge. It doesn't have to be a gourmet meal, from a chef every time. It can be whatever right now there's one that I make is I've got some pasta that's it's not really pasta, it's pea protein in pasta shape. And I just take a pound of lean ground turkey, garlic, oregano, Italian spices, mushrooms, some celery, throw it in a skillet, fry it up, dump 2 cans of tomato sauce, not ragu, but tomato sauce, because it's only 25 calories. Mix that in together, dump it on top of the pasta, shred some Parmesan cheese on top, and I stick that in the fridge. And then all I have to do is stick it in the microwave for 3 minutes.
How long does that take you to make?
I make, so
20 minutes?
On Sunday night, I make 4 lunches, 4 dinners, and 4 breakfasts in 30 minutes.
Okay. So it can be done. To see something like that sounds way more, delicious and diverse than what I'm doing, because
right.
I'm like Dan. I'm eating the same thing every day because it's just fuel for me, right? I don't, I've never really gotten into the whole food thing. I like food. I love pizza. I like Mexican food, but it's still just fuel, and at the end of the day, for me, it's easier just to do the same thing over and over and over and over again, because like you said, I know exactly how many grams of protein I'm getting, and and we're off and running at that point. But to your point, you can do this. And I've actually looked up recipes. I'm really, really lazy when it comes to cooking. I'm terrible at it. don't particularly enjoy it. I don't get into it in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't mind actually eating something other than plain chicken breast out of the air fryer, but I don't really care enough to put the effort in. But I've looked it up, and there are things out. There are things out on YouTube that you can find that actually sound pretty good, actually sound pretty tasty, and will give you the fuel requirements you need to do the work you need to do.
I'm more than happy to send you a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Each one of them are 600 calories. Each one of them are 40 grams of protein. If you want to change the caloric intake as far as your carbohydrates, it's just a matter of how much quinoa or how much rice you throw in.
Sure.
And it truly is that easy. And a great thing about it, Brian, is that, we think about it from the perspective of, oh my God, I've got to be perfect on Monday. And the truth of the matter is, if you're fueling for your activity, your caloric intake, our bodies don't have a clock that at midnight just says, you didn't make the number.
Yeah.
Right. It's the accumulation over the week that matters. That's why from a nutritionist perspective, when somebody's like, hey, I need to lose weight, well, we look at it as like, well, we're going to have a 500 calorie deficit. We're going to have it for 7 days. It's 3,500. That's probably 1 pound. It's the same thing with how much fuel we're taking in is. So what the reason I'm saying that is, like, when I make my 4, so I take the box of the pasta. It's 4 servings. So I cook it up. The turkey is 4 servings. So I cook it up. The tomato sauce is 4 servings, so I cook it up and then I just split it pretty evenly amongst 4. But it doesn't have to be exactly even, because I'm getting 4 servings over the week, even if one day is a little bit more than the other.
Oh my God, your Tuesday was 25 calories more than your Friday.
Do not allow good enough to be the enemy of perfect.
Right.
Or do not allow perfect to be the enemy of good enough.
To be the enemy of good enough. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So and so that's kind of the, just the concept of how to use periodization for your meals to fuel the work that needs to be done. And if you're fueling the work that needs to be done, you're going to get better. You're going to have PRs. You're going to be lifting more than you've done. And if you're lifting more than you've done before, time and tension on the muscles are going to grow.
Muscles grow, muscles fire in a stronger fashion.
If you're on the watt bike and you're able to produce more power, you're going to be faster. If you're on the road bike and you can produce more power, or you can sustain power for a longer period of time, you're going to be faster. And the only way we win races is by being fast.
And the residual effect of this is, not only you're going to be faster because you've actually built that muscle, but having personal experience with that 255 grams of protein a day, which leaves not very much room for anything else. You're still, there's still a reduction in body fat. You're gaining more lean body mass. I don't think I've really changed in weight, but I certainly have in composition for that. So, if you're on the endurance side of it, you're probably okay with a bit less muscle. Obviously, the stronger you are, the better you are. But
in that case, watts per kilo, if they decrease the kilo and increase the watts, then you might be better off. But there is that point in time in which a decrease in kilo will affect a decrease in watts.
Sure.
So you just kind of have to watch for that.
Yeah.
So
indeed, find that optimum place for your body composition to maximize that.
Yeah, and if everybody's out there, if you're looking at trying to figure out how many calories do I need to have in a day, in 2010 there was a new standard for endurance athletes. It's called the TENHAAF, TEN space HAAF formula. It's a little bit better than the Mifflin St. Jour, but you can kind of bounce between the two, and then you can see which one works out better for you to give you that total daily caloric requirement. And then once you've got that total daily caloric requirement, then you can take, 2 to 2.5 and grams per kilogram to get your protein. You can take, 2, 3 to 6, 7 to 10 for your calories, and then whatever fats you got left over is what you got left over.
And you took away my question, because I was going to ask you, how do people go out and determine where they need to be with all that stuff? So
yep, you can do it that way, or you can drop either one of us an email, and we'll help you out with it.
For sure. we can do that for sure.
Yep. And if you do like a DEXA scan or something like that, we can actually work on your protein requirements based on your lean mass instead of just your overall body weight, which becomes a little bit more precise. But either way, right now the science has shown, from the sports physiology perspective, 2 to 2.5 kilograms per, or I'm sorry, 2 grams per kilogram of body weight is the kind of like the special sauce.
Yep, that seems to be the one that's working for most of the people, for sure.
Yep. Well, Brian, we've been on for 31 minutes, so we'll drop off, and we'll pick back up next week. I forgot to look to see what that might be, but like I said, we'll post out a tentative schedule.
Yeah, and if you got any questions for either of us, shoot us an email. We'll be happy to answer it to the best of our abilities, and we'll see y'all next week, I guess, then.
All right, Brian, you have a great evening.
You do the same, Chuck. Thank you again.
I've got to go eat. I got more protein to take.
I got a chicken sitting right next to me, so
have a great one.
Take care, all.